You're listening to the Whole Hog Sports Podcast. And now, here's your host, Matt Jones.
Basketball talk today on the podcast. Arkansas with that big loss at Florida over the weekend. Texas coming up tomorrow night at Bud Walton Arena. Anthony Kristensen is here in studio with me. 111-77 against the Gators. And, we talked about this game last week and previewed it. Ethan and I did on Friday. And, you talk about Arkansas can win if. They can win if. It felt like there was a lot of ifs that were involved in Arkansas going there and winning. But the biggest one was, how do they handle Florida inside? And they
didn't.
That was the overwhelming, takeaway was that, Florida just totally manhandled Arkansas inside. They're not the first team that's done that this year. And boy, that was pretty eye-opening.
Yes. No, it was even the 34-point difference almost felt too small at a certain point.
Closer than the game really was.
Because it was, just kind of being, in Gainesville the whole day and kind of, going around, going to game day that morning and kind of going around town. Like you could, obviously Florida was playing for a share, to clinch a share of the SEC title. And you could, I guess, feel that anticipation. As I'm driving down the street to go to the arena, there are these kids that are like waving flags around the block, and the line for the student entrance is like super long. They're throwing footballs, they're drinking beers, so you could see like there's a ton of anticipation for the opportunity to clinch a share of the title, and frankly, they probably will win the outright title. When you look at they play Mississippi State tonight, I think that's who they've got tonight. So you would think Florida would win that game.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was not close. You look at Florida's front court, Ruben Chinyelu and Thomas Houck and Alex Condon. I think they combined for 57 points. When you look at Arkansas's main trio of front court players, Nick Pringle, Malik Ewan, and Trevin Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, they combined for 14. And Ruben Chinyelu had 16 rebounds. Arkansas's three guys had 15 combined. It's
not a surprise, though. Every time Arkansas has faced an elite big man this year, and I wouldn't even – maybe sometimes when they haven't faced elite big men, just really good they have struggled against them. That seems like that is this team's kryptonite, is if you have a really strong front court player, and Florida's got like three of them, you're probably going to
for four with Micah Handlogden too. So
it's that's what gives Arkansas fits.
Yeah. There have been times when Arkansas has had good physical games. Tennessee, for example, came into that game as the number one offensive rebounding team in the country, and Arkansas out-rebounded Tennessee that game. But you are correct in saying that, that's too far, few and far between, I guess is the right way to put it. Michigan State, Duke, Houston,
I thought even Alabama, Sherrell.
Aiden Sherrell, Sherrell, Samto Cyril, Georgia, Keyshawn Murphy at Auburn, especially the road game against Auburn. I know Arkansas really took care of business against Auburn in the reverse fixture, but at Auburn, you look at all of these games, that there is kind of that all of these losses. There are like, I guess, some of those kind of common denominators. Maybe Kentucky is a little bit different, but even then, Malachi Moreno I thought had a really nice night that game too. So yeah, that's kind of been, I guess, the kryptonite, if we want to call it that. And the rebounding has been not great all year.
Mm-hmm.
They rate as the number 112 team in the country in offensive rebounding percentage, number 261 in defensive rebounding. So, those are numbers that can, especially if when you get into the tournament, those are things that can hurt you depending on who you go up against. Yale's a really strong rebounding team that will probably, if it wins the Ivy, be on that 12 line, which Arkansas right now is looking at that 5-12 matchup, barring a change. So there's a lot of teams that could take advantage of that, and I'm not sitting here saying that Yale would beat Arkansas by any means. It could happen, sure, anything can happen in March, but I'm just saying that it's a concern, for sure.
That's a
as we
huge
look
concern
into the postseason.
Well, and it makes
and
you,
the rest of the regular season with these last 2 games.
it makes you think that unless they get a path in March where there are some upsets along the way and some teams that have really strong front courts, maybe they get nipped in the first or second round or something. And Arkansas's got to win its games to even talk about post first round. It just feels like that's going to be what sets this team apart in March, or maybe put another way, it's going to be what keeps them going deep into the tournament. I was watching Arizona Iowa State last night.
I was too.
Arizona State. I mean, just look, or not Arizona State, but Arizona. How big they are.
And how
UConn,
they are, yeah.
UConn, Florida. I mean, like the best teams in the country this year.
Michigan.
Yeah, I mean they're huge in the front court, and it's about more than size. You got to have capable players too. But that's what really, I think Duke with Boozer.
Yeah,
like the best teams are really strong in the front court, and there's always been this talk about you got to have guards to win in March, and I think there is an element of truth to that.
For sure.
But boy, it seems to me like the teams that are best equipped to win championships right now are the teams that are really strong in the front court, and I don't see that from Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, look at the past few national champions. I mean, obviously Florida last year,
UConn 2 years before that.
Florida last year, a lot of that was built around the guard play. Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard, but they still had this front court, which is, for my money, the best front court in the country. You look at the UConn teams before that: Donovan Clingan, Adama Sanogo. So, I mean, you look at all of that, and you do need big men, and even the teams that they were playing against. I mean, that Purdue team, Zach Edey, So you need front court presence, and Arkansas has shown at different times this season that it can have that. Tennessee is probably the prime example. You look at the Mississippi State game, even though Mississippi State stinks, it's known for its physicality, and Arkansas, went on the road and beat them by 20. So Ole Miss is another team known for physicality, but also Ole Miss stinks. So other than Tennessee, the only projected tournament team that you've probably seen Arkansas tournament teams you've probably seen Arkansas have its way with the front court is Missouri, which was really good. Obviously Missouri's front court, 2 big physical guys with Mark Mitchell and Sean Phillips. They beat Auburn, split the series with Auburn though, and they also beat Louisville, which at the time was a good rebounding team, but has kind of
but they shoot like 53s a game.
Yes,
so I mean it's a totally different style that they're running.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you look at that, there's some give and take, but I think that is front court production is definitely the biggest concern as you look ahead to these last couple of regular season games with Texas and Missouri both having, like we already mentioned, Missouri, Texas is also pretty good in the front court. And then you look, even beyond that, SEC and NCAA tournament, I think that front court production is probably the biggest concern that you have with Arkansas.
I think Arkansas's last 2 losses really shine a light on roster construction. The Alabama loss, we talked about it, and the lack of a bench. And I know they had injuries that influenced that, but injuries are part of the game. And then this game against Florida, I mean, it's been glaring all year that there's problems in their front court. But holy cow, when you put that up against the mirror of like the best front court probably in college basketball, I mean, I'm very interested to see, and I know you got to finish this season first, but as they move forward and they build the roster for 26-27, what do they do about those 2 areas? Do they try to lengthen the bench, and do they go out and really spend the money that it's going to take to get one of those elite front court players? Like I know Hunter Dickinson didn't bring a championship to Kansas, but Kansas went out and spent the money that it took to get the premier front court player, of that transfer cycle. Like, will Arkansas go out and do what it takes to get that kind of player who's a total difference maker? And Calipari's seen what kind of difference maker you can have when you have a great player in the post.
Yeah, Oscar
whether it be-
Tshiebwe, yeah.
Well, I mean, what
Well,
about
I mean, not
Boogie
just him,
Cousins?
but yeah,
what about
yeah.
Anthony Davis? What about, to a lesser
But
extent?
Tshiebwe in particular is a guy he went and got out of the portal.
Okay.
He started at West Virginia.
Okay.
So, we know that he's shown that he can get, that kind of guy out of the portal,
Yeah.
which is probably what you're looking at trying to do this cycle.
And they're expensive, man. It's like in baseball, going out and getting the Paul Skeens out of the transfer portal. It's going to cost you something to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And you may have to be a little lucky. It's not just that you got to pay them a lot of money. It's that you've got to bring them in and convince them that this is going to be the best spot for you to come in and develop. And we're going to surround you with this, and this, and we're going to give you a chance to win a championship here. I felt like they went, and I know Ewan had some good numbers at Florida State and Pringle, kind of the same thing at South Carolina, but it just didn't feel like they went out and got that elite front court player in the offseason, and maybe they went after some and they couldn't land them. I don't know. I don't follow that close enough. But I just know what I see on the floor right now is not front court wise. It's not what it needs to be to compete with the other teams around them. I felt like they did it a little bit better the first year with Jonas Adu, bringing him in. I know he had the foot injury, but you saw down the stretch last year what Jonas Adu could be. They don't have that in the front court this year.
Yeah, no, Jonas Adu was a big reason why they made that Sweet 16 run last year. And, yeah, I mean, when you look at, there were some reports, over the offseason that they were trying to get Merez Johnson, who ultimately landed at Michigan. And you look at, how good Michigan has been. And, some of that is because, they've got Merez Johnson, they've got Yaxel Lendeborg, who I think they were lightly linked with, but not super heavily kind of connected with, because there was also the big question, was Yaxel Lendeborg going to stay in the draft, which he kind of graded out like he was going to be a late first-round pick, but then ultimately decided to go to Michigan. And you look at the season Michigan's having. Michigan also got Ademara from UCLA, and, Michigan is, one of the 3-4 best teams in the country right now, and has been number one, and has been sensational. You look at, obviously Florida didn't have to go and get any front court guys, but they still had to spend the money to keep those guys, right? So you get that. Duke went out and obviously brought in Cam Boozer for, obviously it's a little different going in getting a one and done freshman like that.
And they got him on the alumni rate.
Yeah. Yeah, a guy literally named after the arena.
Yeah.
Which is, it obviously that's all aside. I think that's a pretty cool story. But, Arizona, you look at, Koa Pete and Ivan Karshenkov, those guys, Krivas as well. And, a couple, obviously Karshenkov and Krivas are two, international guys, and Tommy Lloyd's always been, when he was at Gonzaga under Mark Few, he's always been the guy who's been connected with the international ties and everything. So he's obviously, been a big part of getting guys like that. But yeah, it's. I mean, even beyond that, I mean, Illinois, Houston, these are and I know Houston's kind of like Florida, where more retention, but they went out and got Khalifa Sacco out of Sam Houston, who was a big time portal target for a lot of teams for their to be a backup center. UConn, Iowa State, so many teams, even Nebraska, rank masked. I shouldn't say even Nebraska. Nebraska's been sensational this year, but you know what I mean. It's Gonzaga had to spend to keep Graham Ike. You go down the line. Texas Tech had to spend to keep JT Toppin and get Luke Bamgoy out of the portal. And look at even down JT Toppin, Texas Tech has been sensational in the 3 games they've had without him. So I mean, you go down the line and you see how impactful these elite big time big men can be, and we've seen flashes of Arkansas having some success in the front court, but it's just been too few and far between, and that is like we mentioned, a huge concern as you look down the rest of the regular season, this final week, and then looking ahead to the postseason as well.
There's this running bit for many years. I don't know how much of it's a bit and how much of it's just true. There was the Larry Johnson saying to Nolan Richardson after UNLV beat Arkansas. He said, "You got to get yourself some men." every time Arkansas gets punked in the front court, like happened over, like you just hear that over and over. Larry Johnson's words, living for, gosh, probably close to 40 years now. Still influencing Arkansas basketball, or at least its fans. I will tell you about our friends at Bentonville Glass. You can come by and see them now at 507 South Main in Bentonville, or online at bentonvilleglass.com. They've been serving their community since 1971. They're committed, professional, and versatile. They're your quality leader expert in Northwest Arkansas, skilled craftsmanship. Bentonville Glass, with the highest glass market, or the highest quality products for your glass market needs.
Arkansas needs to start cleaning up the glass.
They really do, yeah. It seems like we go to that Bentonville Glass a lot whenever we're talking about Arkansas struggling in the front court. I guess if there's a positive,
I took it.
If there's a positive from this game Saturday night, it's that Billy Richmond just continues to really elevate his game. 22 points. That's 5 straight games now where he's had 20 points. Before those 5 games, he'd never scored more than I think 16.
16, yep.
Really incredible what he's doing, but I think that you're getting to the point now where it's like, if you're wanting to keep Billy for another year, you might want to slow this thing down, because I tend to think that scouts are seeing this and thinking that here's somebody who maybe a month ago was a sleeper in the NBA draft circles, and I have to believe he's really helped himself with this run that he's put on offensively.
Yeah, no, I mean he's been phenomenal, and I mean, like every time we talk about Billy Richmond, you have to mention everything he does. Without the ball, his effort plays, his defense. He's a guy who's always going to be able to guard the other team's best player, and there's a certain element in that. And sometimes you hesitate to say a guy can guard 1 through 5 just because, there's not a ton of guys who can do that. But, he has done that. Not to say that I would, want him to go out and guard Cam Boozer by any means. But, it's a challenge that he would be ready and willing to take. And, maybe he could have some success with that as well. The concern with him from a professional perspective still is, his shooting range. But you're starting to see that jumper fall a lot more in these past few games, so there is all of that. I'm sure it's something that has been noticed by scouts and a lot of people. But with regard to Billy Richmond and NBA draft talk, you're looking at this draft class being super deep. You look at just this freshman class in general. The last time I looked at a mock draft, 9 of the first 10 were freshmen. And, then even beyond, freshmen, you're looking at guys like Thomas Houck at Florida, who is, picking up some lottery hype. LeBaron Philon at Alabama picking up some lottery hype. So this draft class is really, really deep. So, is it best to I think, and I'm not, an advisor by any means. I think it would be smart for him to test the waters, like Carter Knox did last year, and get that feedback. And at the very least, I should say, test the waters, get the feedback, and then make your decision after that. But yeah, I think he's played himself into the conversation, if nothing else, and I think that just kind of speaks to his own personal development, his own his development, that just everything that kind of goes into that, the coaching that comes into it, and all of that. So, I would be, I think he should test it. I think that would be the smart thing to do, just to, get the feedback at the very least, and then start your professional career if things go really well. So, yeah.
You struggle with your hair?
Yeah,
you had to flick it over like 3 times during that answer.
It's ridiculously long. I'm sure, obviously.
What was your last haircut?
It was either October or November.
Oh my gosh!
So here's my thing: I get my haircut 3 times a year.
I get my haircut every 2 weeks.
I get my haircut.
Like you get to the point where like the grays are coming in, and you cut it short so that they just like you try to hide them as best they can.
So here's my strategy, right? So I'm frugal. I don't like to spend a lot of money. So I go to Sport Clips. You go for the price, not the aesthetics. So I come out looking real chopped most of the time. Or not most of the time, some of the time. But you go there, I go there in March, so I'll get my hair cut before the NCAA tournament. That's just what I do.
Was it last
And
year that
then-
Calipari made a comment about your hair?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
at the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, he asked, "Did you get a haircut?" I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah." Does it look good? He said, "No."
Yeah.
But it was a good time. But yeah, so I get it in March, and then I get it in August, and then October.
Okay.
So
It's very
it's meticulous.
it is meticulous. I'm not one to talk because we go over 2 weeks, but we're like very contrasting styles here. I think what's that mean? I get my hair cut like in a month as many times as you do in a year, something like that. Pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah. We're gonna bring you a hat next time.
I wear a hat whenever I walk the dog in the morning, and that's not the only time I'll wear a hat, but that's the vast majority of times when I'm wearing a hat. You'll see me with Dallo on the leash.
So they play Texas tomorrow night, and there's a lot of people that are talking about, hey, why is Arkansas Texas the only game on Wednesday night in the SEC? Short answer, I don't know, but there's 14 teams playing tonight, and then Arkansas Texas play tomorrow night. There's a lot of people, thinking the SEC's out to get Arkansas, and they've put them in a tough predicament here where they got to play Texas, and they got to travel, and they got to play Saturday against Missouri when nobody else has to have that kind of turnaround. I suspect that the SEC women's tournament probably has something to do with this.
Yeah, the TV slots and all
That on SEC Network tomorrow night are going to be a couple of, at least a couple, maybe 3 women's basketball games, and so that takes that inventory at the or that the SEC women's tournament takes some of that inventory that would be available for men's games. Otherwise, I think that probably has something to do with it. It's the only real explanation I can come up with. But so they get an extra day to prepare for Texas. It's a 6:00 tip-off tomorrow night at Bud Walton Arena. Texas played Florida pretty close. Now, you get into that danger zone where you compare scores. What do you see from Texas? And what kind of challenges do you think they present to Arkansas?
Well, let's get ready to talk front court again. Texas is a really good rebounding team. They rate 15th in the country in offensive rebounding and 49 in defensive rebounding, which, the 49 isn't, a super, it's not a number that jumps off the page, but when you look at Arkansas's defensive rebounding number being 200 something, and that becomes, something that immediately becomes, a bit of concern. Texas is not a great defensive team, so that's where you probably want to see Arkansas kind of take advantage of how good of an offensive team it is. Get Darius Acuff back to being more efficient. He scored 17 points on 19 shots against Florida. It just wasn't his night. But Texas's defense has been not great throughout the season. It rates as the number 109 defense. In the country, but the offense is really good for Texas as well. But yeah, you look at Texas. Obviously there's the familiar name of Tremont Mark. He's played pretty well this season. He's shooting 58% from 2-point shots, and he's got a real low turnover rate, and he takes a good percentage of the shots. He takes a lot of threes. Doesn't hit them at a high rate, but it's something that you have to worry about with him. And he's had a pretty good season. Dalen Swain's probably the guy you have to look at the most for Texas. He's a decent 3-point shooter, though he doesn't shoot them at a super high volume. But he's really good at getting to the basket. He was really good at that last season under Sean Miller at Xavier as well. Gets to the line. So Arkansas has gotten into foul trouble over the past few games. So that is. Something to monitor is Dalen Swain's ability to draw fouls as he drives. He takes the most shots or second most shots on the team behind Tremont Mark. He's also a guy who moves the ball pretty well. He's got a high assist rate. And then you look more at the front courts. Matas Vokatitis. He's a really effective big man. He's another guy who draws a lot of fouls and gets to the line. He's a really good rebounder. And yeah, you get into all of that. Lucina Traore is a guy who they brought in. Also followed Sean Miller from Xavier, but he's been out injured. I don't know the extent of that injury. I probably should, just to be frank. But Camden Heidi's a guy who's played good minutes for them, and Simeon Wiltshire was on last season's St. John's team, who had a great regular season, and then obviously Arkansas beat them in the second round. But yeah, I mean, Jordan Pope's also back from last year's Texas team as well. So there's a lot of different areas that can hurt you, but the main thing that you look at with this Texas team is probably the front court. But the defense hasn't been great, so there's a little bit of mismatches on both sides. So the front court for Texas probably is an advantage for Texas, but then you look at Texas's defense, and you would think Arkansas's offense could really take advantage of that. So it'll be an interesting game, just kind of from those perspectives.
Well, and Arkansas's playing at home.
That too.
I mean it's
big.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Talk about a short bench. That adds one person to the bench.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's the home court advantage for Arkansas this year has been really good. Texas, they're 4-5 away from home, so they haven't been great on the road this season. So, a big deal there. You mentioned Tremont Mark. Did he have 2 bad games against Arkansas last year, or was it just 1?
I believe it was 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I remember it was really bad in Austin, but I couldn't remember how it went in Fayetteville. But I tend to think that there was
the
a
one
point.
In Fayetteville was
wasn't there a point where he had played against Arkansas for 30-something minutes and had not scored? Am I wrong about that, or maybe hadn't made a field goal?
Let's check it out, shall we? All right. So last season, Tremont Mark against Arkansas in the road game, he had 2 points, was 1 of 8 from the field, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, and then in the home game, he had 0 points, and was 0 of 1 from the field.
Yeah, so I mean, that he's going to be motivated to play, well in this game.
Yeah.
But I thought he'd been motivated last year too. Sometimes I guess you can be a little too motivated.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, you can. Sometimes you can get into your own head. Sometimes if you're going, I guess to the wall. I guess I don't know, but yeah, no. I mean, he's had a good season. Obviously, he having covered half of the Arkansas season when he was here. Mm-hmm. You know what he can do. When he's on, and he's been a big part of Texas's, I guess, turnaround to getting not safely into the NCAA tournament field, but better than most bubble resumes. That's not saying a lot because the bubble stinks, but yeah. So he's been a big part of that. So he's going to be a guy to watch. He had an awesome game against Texas A&M and a big.
The Aggies are going to be so happy to see him go. Remember what he did to him here?
Yeah.
What was it, a 30-something, 38 points or something crazy?
Yeah.
Just took over a game against them here.
I believe.
And I think he's done that to him at least one other time since he's been in Austin.
If I'm not mistaken, that Texas A&M game was either the last game or second to last game before I moved to Arkansas to start this job. But I was watching the games, A, because I just watch college basketball, B, to get myself more familiar with the team and everything and the storylines and all that to prepare myself for the job. And I do remember that game. That was that was fun. And then he hit another one against him last season too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, beat a buzzer beater to beat him, right?
I think he's like.
Yeah, the Aggies.
He loves playing against Texas A&M.
Yeah, the Aggies.
Except they are
ready to get him out of town or out of the state or something.
In the home game against A&M, when A&M won, he scored 13 points and was 6 of 14 from the field. So a rare, not great game for Tremont Mark against Texas A&M. But then he turned it around and had 23 points in a huge win for Texas. I
did see him
Station.
say something. He said, "I don't like the color maroon." So it's kind of like, it's kind of like the bull. You pull out the red flag, and he just runs right through it.
Little maroon
flag.
For
Tremont Mark. Brings out the rage.
But yeah, no, he's good. He's good, and it'll that I'm sure he'll be one of the first names on the scouting, or was, I guess, one of the first names in the scouting report. But yeah,
Does Arkansas beat Texas tomorrow?
Are you asking me to make a prediction?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean, what are you, Kirk Herbstreit? You can't make a prediction because you're going to be at the game.
You would think so, right? I mean, you look at Arkansas's offense versus Texas's defense, and it's just it's a clear, area in which Texas just probably isn't a team that's going to keep up with Arkansas's offense. But I mean, and you look at some of the more explosive teams that Texas has played against. They lost to Duke, they lost to Florida, but like we said, kind of kept that close for a lot of the game. Lost to Georgia, lost to Auburn, which that loss has aged poorly. Lost to Kentucky, lost to Tennessee. So you look at some of these, lost to UConn. You look at some of these, really good offensive teams that Texas has played against, and they've struggled. But then on the other side, they beat Vanderbilt, but obviously Texas is bigger and more physical, and that's the kind of team Vanderbilt has really struggled against this season. But yeah, I would probably say that Arkansas probably is the favorite because of the offense and Texas's defense, or sometimes lack thereof. But if the result is to flip and Texas is to come in and beat Arkansas at Bud Walton, I think it would have to be because of the front court and getting, Matas Vokatitis, really involved, and Tremont Mark probably having a good game as well.
How about speaking of Auburn, Bruce Pearl out here trying to do Stephen Pearl's bidding and, pulling for a Miami of Ohio to lose in the MAC tournament.
Also, look.
For people who haven't heard this, Bruce Pearl said over the weekend on TNT, he said that if Miami of Ohio, what are they, 30-0 now? Or are they 29-0? 29-0. They have... He says that if they don't win their conference tournament, they shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament, who would that benefit? That would benefit bubble teams, one of which is the Auburn Tigers.
Auburn should not be a bubble team. 15 and 14. I know the strength of schedule is, the number one strength of schedule in the country, but however, you've also got...
the strength of schedule is that's the argument against Miami of Ohio. I think theirs is like 321.
Yeah. So, I mean, you understand that, but... Auburn's strength of schedule is number one, but they've also gotten nuked in so many games. And, I mean, when you look at Miami, Ohio, 29-0 with, a not good, a frankly terrible strength of schedule, right? But they're still 29-0. The likelihood that Miami, Ohio would have been undefeated at this stage of the season entering the year was like less than 0.5%.
Cue me talking about this 20 times between now and Selection Sunday. This is why you should send your regular season conference champion to the NCAA tournament and not this Mickey Mouse crap at the conference tournaments.
But let me be clear. Miami, Ohio should be in regardless.
That's my point.
Yeah.
They're the best team in their conference.
Yeah.
They've been the best team in their conference over the course of many, many weeks, 13, 14 weeks, or I guess you want to narrow it down to conference only play, like 2 months. Why are you determining who gets your conference bid based on who's the best team for 3 days?
Yeah, no.
When you're playing basketball, unlike any other time in the season, when else has Miami of Ohio been asked to play 3 games in 3 days?
Yeah.
Maybe it's some sort of multi-team event on Thanksgiving, but this doesn't make any sense. It's just like it doesn't make any sense that you only get 3 haircuts a year. You don't choose who your conference champion is on 3 games in 3 days when the rest of the time you're playing 3 games in like 10 or 11 days. Like you cannot explain that one to me.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I understand why the conference tournaments are played. It's all about money.
Yeah,
but I don't know. Maybe shrink the conference tournaments and only invite your best teams.
That's what the Ivy does.
Because really what it's about the championship game. Especially for these mid-major conferences, low major conferences. Maybe invite your 2 best teams and you play a true conference championship game. I would entertain that idea a lot more than I would, hey, let's have a 16-team tournament over 4 or 5 days and maybe your best teams get picked off because they just have a bad day because their legs are tired because they're not used to playing this much basketball.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But, I mean, I know the MAC doesn't send every team to the conference tournament. I don't remember how many teams actually get in. But, like, you look at the Ivy League, I think only 4 teams get in. I think that's probably the best way to do it for any conference tournament. But I especially, a mid to low major conference. But, like, Miami, Ohio, like, if Miami, Ohio goes undefeated and then loses in the conference tournament and then is left out of the field, you're telling what?
That could be the best thing that could happen for the future of the tournament. Like I'm serious. You need something high profile like that to happen to get the conference's attention. Like, okay, maybe what we're doing is not the best way to be doing this.
But still, I mean, if a team goes undefeated in the regular season and then loses in the conference tournament and then doesn't go to the NCAA tournament, you are telling every team outside of the power conferences that no game that you play matters until your conference tournament, and you simply cannot do that.
Yeah.
And I like I said, I fully understand why people are having this conversation. Miami, Ohio's strength of schedule stinks. It does. It's bad. It's very bad. Part of that is because a bunch of power conference teams will refuse to play against a team from a mid-major league that is projected to be good, which Miami, Ohio was. Like, I know one mid-major coach in particular had one season where they went 500 and then struggled to get games the next year. They went 500.
Yeah.
And so this is just, it all kind of culminates to, how just the current landscape is just messed up with, the way the tournament is selected and all of that. And if you leave Miami, Ohio out after an undefeated regular season, or even just a 1-loss regular season, you are telling every team outside of the major conferences, the Power Five of the SEC, Big Ten, Big East, ACC, and which one am I missing?
The other one.
You're telling every team outside of the power conferences that your regular seasons don't matter, and you cannot do that.
Hey, I wanted to ask you real quick before we get out of here. What was it like being at College Game Day?
It was kind of fun. Yeah, it was cool.
Did you and Jay Billis hug?
We did not hug.
Okay.
No. 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 So it was a cool experience. It was fun. The kid they brought out to do the half court shot hit it.
Yeah,
so that was real cool, and it was a lot of fun. And
had you ever been to College Game Day before?
No, not for basketball, not for football, not for anything. So
when
it was
Game Day
cool.
came to Fayetteville, I've been 2 times. Once for football, once for basketball. Both times when they came to Fayetteville. Football they came for the Tennessee game in 2006. Basketball they came 2 years ago for the Kentucky game. I don't know. It's not for me. I guess maybe I'll just put it that way. The basketball one, and I was actually surprised on Saturday. I didn't realize that it was a 2-hour show when they came to Fayetteville last year, or 2 years ago. It was a 1-hour show. I'm sitting there, I'm watching it. I got the other things I got to get done on Saturday morning, and I'm like, why are they going to break at 9:57? Shouldn't the show be like where are the picks here? And so that threw me off. I didn't really enjoy being there for the basketball one. Football one, I was actually living near campus at that time, and
the
I was
football
there.
one seems like there's more pageantry,
you couldn't hear anything. And so I was like, well, I want to actually see the show. So I actually ran back to my house, watched the show until about, I don't know, quarter till, and then ran back down to the stadium in time to see Lee Corso put on the headgear. So those have been my College Game Day experiences. It's weird. It's definitely a made-for-TV show.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have the audience there to, have great television. But man, I tell you, both times that I've been in the crowd for that, I hadn't really enjoyed it very much. I don't think I'd go back.
It was tough to hear.
Yeah.
Like I was trying to record segments, audio
oh, good luck with
record
that.
audio
Yeah.
for some segments.
No.
I got
empty arena,
yeah.
like a mostly empty arena, and then you got like the cheering part, and
it was.
There's no way you're getting good audio on that.
Not at all. Got very very little of that, but no, it was fun. I mean, like I said, there's the pageantry with it, and
it's weird when your team or like the team that you're interested in is on game day, but it's not on your campus. And you know what I'm saying? Where it's like, because Arkansas had this happen too one time where they went to Georgia and they got smacked at Georgia for football. I was actually thinking about that Saturday. There were a lot of parallels between that football team going to Georgia and getting slapped around, and then what happened with basketball the other day. I don't know. It's a very different feeling. I almost feel like part of the draw of game day is like getting to see them on your campus, and kind of highlight your facilities. You're this, you're that. It's a totally different thing whenever it's on the road. But I'm glad you got to go.
Yeah, no, it was
experience
fun.
that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow with another podcast. Hope that we see you at our website, wholehogsports.com. Baseball game today. Razorbacks play ORU at 3:00 over at Baum-Walker Stadium. A few former Razorbacks are on the ORU roster. We wrote about them today at wholehogsports.com. You can read about it there and all of our coverage from the game tonight. Hope that we see you on our website or tomorrow on the show. Have a great day.